Once again, welcome. Today we will be discussing about the carbohydrate metabolism. So we are now well aware about the term metabolism, catabolism, anabolism, that we ATPs that we have discussed in the previous lectures. So what is the role of this ATP? That is an energy currency for most of the reactions, for anabolic and the catabolic type of the reactions. So look at this one. Simple molecules, just a minute. So look at this one. Simple molecules such as glucose, amino acid, glycerols, and fatty acids uh, that is actually using this ATP to form the complex molecules. And as a result of that, this ATP that is converting into ADP plus B, that will be, we may say that the energy is utilizing for these type of the reaction. So as a result of that, the product is generated. These are the simple molecule that are now converted into complex molecule by the use of the ATP. What are these complex molecules? Such as glycogen, proteins, and triglycerides. Glycogen is produced from the glucose. Proteins are produced from the amino acid. Glycerol and fatty acid that converted into the triglyceride molecule. So it's a synthetic process. So we call them as the anabolic reaction. So these anabolic reaction, as we have discussed earlier, that is utilizing the ATPs, that is utilizing this ATP. So as a result of that, heat is released. So against to that, in contrary to that, the complex molecule undergoes catabolic processes to give you the simpler molecules. So these are the bigger molecules that are converted through the catabolic process into the simpler substances, and as a result of that, the heat is released. So these are the catabolic processes. So in the catabolic processes, ATP is generated, energy is generated, energy is generated in the catabolic process. So how the energy is transferred? Oxidation reduction reaction that are important. We have talked about the several kind of the enzyme that belongs to the class of oxidoreductase. Especially we talked about the dehydrogenase. That is actually involved for the oxidation reduction reaction. Simply we call them the redox reactions. So we have previously in the first lecture we have discussed about the definition of the oxidation and the reduction, several definitions for the oxidation and the reduction. So oxidation, one of the definition we have talked about the removal of the electrons, decrease in the potential energy, dehydrogenation process, removal of the hydrogens. So liberated hydrogen that transferred by the coenzyme NAD. We talked about the NAD, we talked about the FAD, we talked about FMN, and the glucose is oxidized. So all of that is the result of the oxidation process. Simply we can call them the degradation reaction, catabolic type of the reactions. And against to that, reduction process. That is the addition of electrons, increase in potential energy. So you may reverse all of that in the reduction process. So there are three ways of ATP generation in the nature. One is called substrate level phosphorylation. Second, oxidative phosphorylation, just like the electron transport chain. And third one is the photophosphorylation that can only happen where the photosynthesis process take place. So in the plants, in the some photosynthetic bacteria. So these are the three mechanisms of the ATP generation, and you know the ATP, that is the backbone for the energy currency. So we will be talking about the carbohydrate metabolism, a lot more carbohydrate we are taking in our daily diet. So first of all, that the complex carbohydrates that have to be converted into the simpler substances, just like the glucose. Glucose is the simplest substance. It's a monosaccharide. It's a simpler substance. So fate of the glucose that depends on need of the body cells, ATP production, or synthesis of the amino acids, glycogen, or triglycerides. So this is the fate of the glucose that can be used for ATP production, that can be used, or they can be used for amino acid synthesis, or they can be converted into glycogen in the body, or that even that can be converted into the triglyceride to store in the body. How they are transported? There are several transporting system for the glucose is available in our body. These are called as the GLUT, G-L-U-T. GLU for glucose, T transporter. GLUT system. We have different GLUT system in our body to transport the glucose into the cell. Various methods are available. One of the method is the facilitated diffusion process. So insulin have the role for that. Insulin cause insertion of more of these transporters, increase the rate of entry into the cell. So without the insulin, glucose can, in most of the systems, most of the GLUT system, without the insulin, glucose cannot enter into your cells. For most of the GLUT system, not all the, for the GLUT glucose transporter that are working here at your brain level, at your nervous system, that doesn't require the use of the insulin. So glucose was trapped in the cell after being phosphorylated. So this is the only way to capture the glucose into the cell that become phosphorylated. Once the glucose is entered, that become phosphorylated, so that now it cannot be back out from the cell. So this is the examples of some of the glucose transported systems. So in the previous slide, we have talked about that there are several glucose systems working in the body. So there are certain glucose transporter system I have listed here in this table. SGLT1. What is the function of this type of the glucose transporter? That is involved in absorption of glucose by active transport. That is, energy is derived from the sodium potassium pump. And where that resides, that is working in intestine and renal tubules. GLUT5. What is the function of that? It's a fructose transport system, and to a lesser extent, glucose and the galactose. And where that resides, intestine and the sperm. GLUT2 transport system, transport glucose out of the intestinal and the renal cells. Circulation, bring the glucose into the circulation. And where is the place? Intestine and renal tubules, beta cells of the islet level. So there are so many GLUT system are available within your body, human body. These are the selective one I have listed here. So talking about the energy release from the carbohydrate, there are several processes we will be going to discuss in maybe in the next lecture as well. We will be talking about the glycolysis. We will be talking about anaerobic respiration that doesn't require the need for oxygen. We will be talking about the formation of the acetyl CoA. We will be talking about Krebs cycle reaction. We will be talking about electron transport chain reaction. that is an aerobic type of the respiration. So all of this is involved in glucose catabolic process for the energy release. Commonly will call them as cellular respiration process. So what are the overview of the cellular respiration? So look at this one. First of all, the glucose through the glycolysis process, that one glucose molecule that is converted into 2 pyruvic acid. So it's not a simple step just like glucose is converting into pyruvic. There are 10 steps involved in this process. We will be discussing in this maybe in the next lecture, glycolysis process. Then this pyruvic acid that is converting into the acetyl CoA, and these acetyl CoA entering into the mitochondria goes for the Krebs cycle. So you can see there at each step there is the production of NAD in reduced form of the energy NADH that may undergo the electron transport chain for generating ATPs that will be undergoing oxidative phosphorylation. So when pyruvic acids are produced that are converting into acetyl CoA, again there is generation of NADH. This NADH that further goes to the electron transport chain to produce oxidative phosphorylation and ATPs. And Krebs cycle happening into the mitochondria. Again, ATPs are generated, NADH is generated, FADH is generated, and this NADH and FADH again go to the electron transport chain for the energy, for the production of the ATPs. So this is the brief summary of all the things that we will be discussing for the energy liberation reaction from the carbohydrate. This glucose, it's a monosaccharide carbohydrate. So look at this one, this NADH, this NADH, this NADH, this FADH that is going to electron transport chain for generation of ATPs. Normally 32 or 34 ATPs that are generated from one glucose unit. So you can see how complex is the process that is happening into the cell. So we will be discussing in detail all these processes of the metabolism. There are so many reactions involved in this one. So look at this one. What are the fates of these metabolic reactions? Glucose, if present in excess, this is the carbohydrate. If that is present in excess, that is converted into the glycogen. What is the pathway? Glycogenesis. So this is a pathway, so containing several type of the reaction. It's not a simple conversion of the glucose into the glycogen, but there are several type of the reaction. It's a complete pathway, glycogenesis. So when your body is in fasting condition, this glycogen then convert into the glucose through the process of glycogenolysis. Again, it's a pathway. So pathway means consisting of the several reactions. So it's not a one single reaction, it's a several reaction, it's a pathway. So now you can remember the several reaction and their pathways that is involved in this metabolic process. So up till now we have talked about glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, glycogenesis, glycogenolysis. So these are the pathways consisting of several reactions. Another pathway is the pentose phosphate pathway, in which glucose is converted into the pentose and other sugar. Again, these pentose and the other sugar that are used for anabolic process. These are the product that is used for the anabolic process. So pentose phosphate pathway that is providing NADPH, pentose sugars, and other sugars. So we have talked about the glycolysis process. In glycolysis process, glucose is converting into the pyruvate. There is another process that is called as gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis means production of the glucose from non-carbohydrate source. So from lactate, glucose is generated. From alanine amino acid, glucose can be generated through the gluconeogenesis process. From pyruvate, through the gluconeogenesis process that is converted into the glucose. So gluconeogenesis is another pathway. What does it mean? It's a synthetic type of the pathway that result in the production of the glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. So another pathway reaction in which pyruvate is converted into the acetyl CoA. Acetyl CoA has the several fates that can be generated from the glucose through the glycolysis pyruvate, and then pyruvate is converted into the acetyl CoA. Acetyl CoA also produced through amino acids, certain amino acid that is converting into the acetyl CoA. Acetyl CoA also produced through fatty acids. Some of the fatty acid that is converting into acetyl CoA. So all of that acetyl CoA that undergoes into the mitochondria where citric acid cycle happen, where the electron transport chain system exists. So acetyl CoA that is responsible for the production of the ATPs. So up till now we conclude our lecture that carbohydrate metabolism it's a complex process. In the next lecture we will be talking about the glycolysis process and how this glycolysis process, how the glucose is converting into the pyruvate. This is the glycolysis process. This is the glycolysis process, how this glucose that is converting into the pyruvate. We will be talking about that in the next lecture. So we will be stop here. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you will be caring yourself and your family.